there's a moment, just one, that changes everything. It's not dramatic, no thunderclap or lightning strike. Just a quiet realization, the kind that sneaks up on you when you're alone, staring at your reflection in the bathroom mirror after everyone else has gone to bed. You've been smiling through the ache for so long that it feels like part of your face now. But tonight something shifts. The smile fades, and for the first time in what feels like forever, you look at yourself, not just with tired eyes but with honesty. You see the cracks in the mask you've worn for years, the way your shoulders carry the weight of everyone else's expectations, how your laughter doesn't quite reach your eyes anymore. And then comes the question, soft but insistent. When was the last time I loved myself? Not in the superficial way we talk about self-care, not the bubble baths and face masks and motivational quotes we pin to Pinterest boards, but real love, the kind that demands presence, honesty, and action. The kind that says, I matter. It hits you all at once, like a wave crashing over your chest. You haven't loved yourself, not truly, for a long time. Maybe not ever. And suddenly, you understand why everything feels off-kilter. Why relationships end in disappointment, why friendships feel strained, why even your own thoughts have turned into battlegrounds. Because you've been trying to pour from an empty heart. The metaphor is simple, but its truth is devastating. We give so much of ourselves away, thinking that generosity will fill us up, that if we love others hard enough, they'll love us back in the ways we need. But that's not how it works. Love isn't a transaction. It's not something you earn by giving more than you receive. It's something you cultivate within. A wellspring that nourishes you so that you can share from abundance, not desperation. And yet society tells us otherwise. From the time we're young, we're taught to put others first, to be good, to be agreeable, to be helpful. Girls are praised for being pleasing. Boys are told to suppress their emotions because vulnerability is weakness. Somewhere along the way, we learn that our worth is tied to how much we can give, how many people we can make happy, how seamlessly we can fit into the roles assigned to us. But here's the thing. When you spend your life trying to meet other people's expectations, you start to forget who you are. You lose touch with your needs, your desires, your boundaries. You become a reflection of what others want you to be, instead of standing in the fullness of who you were meant to be. And that disconnection, it hurts deeply. So many of us walk around with this quiet ache inside, not knowing where it comes from or how to fix it. We try to numb it with distractions, work, social media, shopping, relationships that don't serve us. But none of those things can fill the void that only self-love can heal. Because the truth is, no one else can do it for you. No amount of validation from others can replace the foundation of loving yourself. That's the lesson I had to learn the hard way. Let me tell you my story. It started with a relationship, one that seemed perfect on paper but left me feeling more alone than ever. His name was Daniel. Charming, successful, always knew the right thing to say. Everyone thought we were the ideal couple. But behind closed doors, he was emotionally distant, critical in ways that cut deeper than outright cruelty. He never raised his voice, but his silence spoke volumes. At first, I told myself it was normal. Every relationship has its ups and downs, right? But as the months went by, I found myself walking on eggshells, constantly second-guessing my words, my actions, my very existence. If I wasn't careful, I would trigger his disapproval. And worse than his disapproval was the emptiness that followed. A hollow space where affection should have been. Still I stayed. Because I believed that if I just tried harder, if I showed him enough love, he would finally see me. Finally love me the way I needed to be loved. So I gave more of myself, my time, my energy, my emotional labor. I molded myself into the person I thought he wanted, suppressing parts of me that didn't fit his image. And still I felt invisible. Eventually, the weight became too much. One night, after another fight that ended in cold silence, I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at my hands and wondering how I'd gotten here. How had I become someone who begged for scraps of attention while ignoring her own pain? When did I stop seeing myself clearly? That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I looked at myself without judgment. I let the tears come not out of shame but out of grief. Grief for the version of me who had disappeared somewhere along the way. And in that moment, I made a decision. I would no longer sacrifice myself for someone else's comfort. Leaving Daniel was the hardest thing I've ever done. Not because I loved him more than I loved myself, but because letting go meant facing the reality of who I had become, and realizing I didn't recognize myself anymore. Without him, I felt untethered, like I had spent so long defining myself in relation to him that I didn't know who I was on my own. But in that uncertainty there was freedom. For the first time in years I could breathe. I could listen to the quiet voice inside me that had been drowned out by the noise of trying to please everyone else. And slowly I began to rebuild. Not just my life but my sense of self. It wasn't easy. Healing rarely is. There were days when I doubted myself, when old habits crept in and I wanted to shrink back into the version of me that people liked better. But I kept showing up for myself. I learned to sit with discomfort instead of running from it. I practiced speaking my truth, even when it scared me. I gave myself permission to rest, to take up space, to say no without guilt. And as I did, something remarkable happened. I started attracting different kinds of people. People who saw me, who respected me, who loved me not for what I could give them, but for who I was. I stopped chasing validation and started cultivating connection based on mutual respect and understanding. More importantly, I fell in love with myself. Not in a narcissistic, self-absorbed way, but in the deep, grounding way that changes everything. I learned to hold myself with compassion, to forgive myself for my mistakes, to celebrate my strengths without comparison. I learned that self-love isn't about perfection. It's about presence. It's about choosing yourself again and again, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Because here's the thing. When you love yourself, you set a standard. You show people how to treat you by treating yourself with dignity. You create a ripple effect that touches every relationship in your life. You stop tolerating disrespect because you know your worth. You stop settling for less than you deserve because you refuse to betray yourself. And maybe most importantly, you become a source of light rather than a seeker of it. Now, whenever I feel the old patterns creeping in, the urge to apologize for taking up space, the temptation to prioritize others' needs over my own, I remind myself of that moment in the mirror. I remember what it felt like to pour from an empty heart, and I choose differently. I refill my own cup before offering it to anyone else. Because love begins within. If you're reading this and feeling that familiar ache, I want you to know, you're not alone. You don't have to keep living this way. You don't have to keep giving pieces of yourself away until there's nothing left. You don't have to wait for someone else to love you the way you deserve. You already have everything you need. Start with yourself. Speak kindly to the person in the mirror. Set boundaries even if they scare you. Say yes to the things that bring you joy, and no to the things that drain you. Give yourself the same patience and understanding you so freely offer to others. Because when you love yourself first, everything else falls into place. Relationships become healthier. Confidence grows from within. Peace becomes your default state. You begin to attract the kind of energy that matches your own. Love that is rooted in respect, reciprocity, and authenticity. And that, my friend, is when the magic happens. So go ahead, fill your own cup. Pour your love inward, and watch how the world lights up in response.